Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. I'm Bobby Sylvester and I'm on Twitter at Bobby Fantasy Pro. Today I'm going to talk to you all about week 9 start or sit decisions. And when I'm talking about this, for the most part, it's for 12-team leagues. You can apply it to your league if it's 10-team, 8-team, 14-team, whatever. And I'm going to be taking questions at the end for a bunch of those that I don't answer. So I'm going to cover some plays that I'm especially passionate about this week that I believe are definite starts or definite sits that most people would consider on the border or asking a lot of questions about. If I don't answer your questions, though, you can go to the Start Sit Assistant. Basically, all you do is you plug your team into my playbook on Fantasy Pros. It's a free tool that we have. You can upload one team for free, and it'll give you all the expert advice. So it takes 130 experts, or you can pick whichever team of 5 experts that you trust the most, and you can plug them in. It'll tell you who those experts recommend starting or sitting with your difficult decisions. So if you've got an 8-team league and I'm not really answering any of your questions, you can still check that out. But I'm going to give you some valuable information on about 18 players here and cover a lot of other guys that I'm planning on starting and sitting. So let's start at the quarterback position with Mitch Trubisky of the Chicago Bears. And this isn't the best matchup for him. He's going up against Buffalo, whose defense has been significantly better of late. But right now, Mitch Trubisky is just absolutely on a roll. I've said this on the podcast. I host a podcast with Mike Tagliere. It's called the Fantasy Bros Football Podcast. If you haven't heard it, I was talking just the other day. Mitch Trubisky right now has the second best 4-game stretch for a quarterback in fantasy football history, right behind Tom Brady in 2007, just ahead of Peyton Manning in his great year and Aaron Rodgers in 2 years. Those are the guys in the top 5, and Trubisky is right there in the middle of it. I would not bench him for anybody in any matchup. Well, I would bench him obviously for Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, but hopefully you're in that situation and have those guys to decide between. But I've got Patrick Mahomes, I've got Mitch Trubisky way up in my top 10 at quarterback number 8. By the way, I'm going to be rolling out my rankings later on Twitter, again at Bobby Fantasy Pro, so you can check those out. I always pin it to the top of the page, that way you can see how I would answer your start sit questions. So I've got Trubisky as a must start in my top 8. The other guy I want to talk about is Drew Brees. A lot of people have been asking, like, man, this guy is not throwing any passes, he's not playing in the red zone that much. What is going on? Should I just flat out drop him? Can I play him this week against the Rams, who have a good defense? He is an absolute must start for me. I've got him as my quarterback for this week. I know he's only thrown 29, 30, 23 passes the last 3 weeks, but guys, he's played 2 easy defenses so far this year, and here's what he did: 37 for 45, 439 pass attempts. I'm sorry, 439 passing yards for 3 touchdowns. And then Atlanta, 39 for 49 with 396 and 5. The Rams secondary actually has not been that good. Their pass rush is very good, but the Saints have the best pass protection in the NFL. I think he's going to have plenty of time to throw. I think that he's going to throw the ball 35 plus times. And the over under on this game is astronomical. It is near 60. I think it's 59 and a half right now. So Breeze is a definite start. Somebody that I'm not definitely starting is Baker Mayfield. I get it. He's got a great matchup going up against Kansas City. He's been throwing a lot of passes. And so you can make a case for him. He's definitely not the worst play in the world, but he's just taking so many sacks. He's under pressure all the time. He doesn't have any playmakers who are going to, take a screen pass to the house. It's all Baker Mayfield, and there's only so much that he can do as a rookie behind this offensive line. So I'm not starting him against Kansas City. I might next week against Atlanta if he looks healthier, but remember, he's still a little bit banged up. Here's a couple other guys that I am playing. I've obviously got Jared Goff in there. You don't need me to tell you that. Kirk Cousins has a good matchup against Detroit this week. Matt Ryan, I think, is a definite start. Guys, he's second in the league in fantasy points right now for quarterbacks. It's not the best matchup against Washington, but anytime you've got a top 5 quarterback, I think you start him unless they're going up against Jacksonville or Minnesota or Baltimore. This is not one of those matchups. Washington is, I don't know, maybe the 10th best defense against the pass. So I think Ryan is a start. I would actually play him over Mitch Trubisky if I had to this week. Deshaun Watson coming off the 5 touchdown game. He's going to Denver, who's going to get after him. And Houston has a really bad offensive line, but you start him. By the way, I want to mention, I am sorry. This time last week, I told people to bench Deshaun Watson. I still think the process was correct. I mean, he only did throw 20 passes. He just happened to have 5 touchdowns in there. He didn't fly with the team because he had a punctured lung. So I don't think it was a great play, but it definitely worked out for those who did play him. So if you benched him because of me, please forgive me. I'm going to miss on some this year. Hopefully not on any this show. Russell Wilson is a start against the Chargers. He's not throwing the ball that much. He's not running the ball that much, but He's been playing great football. You can't bench him. I've got Fitzpatrick as my number 12 quarterback against Carolina. It's a good matchup. He's been phenomenal every time he's played this year. He's got the weapons. I think you play him over guys like Phillip Rivers against Seattle, who's having a good season, but he's just outside my top 12. If you're really desperate, I've got Joe Flacco up against Pittsburgh. He's throwing like 40 passes per game. Once again, the past 2 years, he's been doing it almost every single week. It's a good matchup against Pittsburgh. So I would play Joe Flacco. Alex Smith is in the conversation as well. He gets Atlanta. Matthew Stafford, I'm not playing. A lot of people have been asking about him because he gets the Vikings, and I could definitely see him putting up some points here, but he's just not the safest play. I would rather go with someone like Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, Matt Ryan, Russell Wilson. So let's see. Big Ben also against Baltimore is somebody that I'm sitting. Let's move on over to the running back position, and we'll start here with Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson, as you know, is the third down back for Washington, and he's banged up right now. He was banged up last week, and he still played. And he wasn't the greatest start then, but he definitely is this. He's not the greatest start. Obviously, Todd Gurley is the greatest start. But I definitely think Chris Thompson needs to be played against Atlanta because they've just been absolutely dreadful against pass catching running backs. He was sidelined from Wednesday's practice, so you'll need to watch the injury report on that one. But assuming he's good to go again, I would line him up. I'm starting him over guys like Peyton Barber, who's going to get a bunch of touches, LaShawn McCoy, even Ito Smith, Frank Gore, Derrick Henry. So I've got Chris Thompson safely within my top 30. I think he's a great flex play. Somebody else I wouldn't mind playing so much is Doug Martin. He's going tonight. I know Jalen Richard's going to be involved. He was already involved, guys. He's got 39 receptions in 7 games, so I think you can start Richard too. But Doug Martin moved immediately right into that Marshawn Lynch role. And it wasn't a great role. Like, it's obviously not the most coveted role in football. With that said, he's going to get 15 carries almost every single week. And in a matchup against San Francisco, who, their run defense is improved, but it's still not top 16, probably not even top 20. I would start someone who's going to get 15 touches against them. The next guy is Kenyon Drake. I've had a lot of people asking, well, he's still not the starter. Can I trust him? Yeah, you can trust him. You can trust any guy who's getting, 27 targets in the last 4 games. Plus, he's getting about a dozen or so carries each game. He's not the starter, but his last 4 weeks, 18 fantasy points, 6 fantasy points, 15, 22. That's in standard leagues. That's not even in PPR leagues where, he's catching a lot of passes. So 25, 10, 19, 24. You start this guy until further notice. Even against Baltimore, I would start Kenyon Drake. LaShawn McCoy, I already mentioned. I am not playing him. I don't know if y'all noticed, but last week was ugly for him. He went for 12 carries, 13 rushing yards against a bad rushing defense. He did happen to catch the ball in the air. It wasn't the best game script because obviously the Bills were going to be down, but what are you expecting? The Bills are one of the worst teams in football. They're going up against Chicago. I'm expecting them to be down 10, 15 points most of the game. Chicago also happens to have maybe the best run defense in the NFL. So as far as I'm concerned, you do not start LaShawn McCoy this week. I've got him at running back 32. So I guess you could flex him because, there's 6 teams on bye. So, there's a lot of guys that you're going to have to replace. You probably don't want to drop LaShawn McCoy for somebody else that you would rather play like Jalen Richard, but it's not a good situation to be playing LaShawn McCoy. Let's move on over to, actually, you know what? Let me cover a couple other running backs really quick before we go to wide receiver. Tariq Cohen is a must start each and every week. So is Lamar Miller at this point. Deshaun Watson, like I mentioned, is not passing the ball much. Miller has been feasting the past 2 weeks. This Denver run defense has not been good for a few years. I've actually got Lamar Miller as an RB1, my number 12 running back this week. Phillip Lindsay, same thing. He's RB13. Nick Chubb, I know he hasn't been getting it done. It's not a good game script, but he's going to get the carries. So in a week like this with 6 teams on bye, you start Nick Chubb. Chris Carson as a start. Jordan Howard has been getting, he's only playing 50% of the snaps, but he's been getting a ton of carries as well. He had 22 rushes last week. Matt Breida is going to play tonight, it seems like. Now there's a chance he gets scratched, so make sure to check last minute. But if Matt Breida plays, you definitely start him against Oakland, who has one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Kerryon Johnson, I know he's going up against Minnesota, but he's still one of those guys that you play every week regardless, especially with 6 teams on bye. Isaiah Crowell, I've been sour on him, but you know what? He's the starting running back. With Bilal Powell out, he's going to get even more work. It's a good matchup against Miami, who's been getting crushed lately. And then Alex Collins against Pittsburgh is a good play as well. Aaron Jones. A couple guys I'm not playing here. Ito Smith, I mentioned him. Duke Johnson, I know that they've got the new offensive coordinator, and it's a good matchup against Kansas City, but let's wait and see on Duke Johnson. I think he's probably going to burn you more weeks than not. In fact, I would just leave him on the waiver wire at this point. I'd rather have someone like Austin Eckler, Jalen Richard, who's going to be catching a lot of passes. Derrick Henry, I think you should drop him. If you're still holding on to him, I would quit on that one. Over at wide receiver, I know Corey Davis has been burning you all year, but you look at the matchups he's had, it has been an absolute nightmare for him. I mean, what would you expect most receivers to do against Xavier Howard, Houston, Jalen Ramsey? He ate against Philadelphia. It was the only good matchup of the season. He had Tre'Davious White in week 5. He had Jimmy Smith in week 6. He had Casey Hayward in week 7. Guys, that is the most difficult schedule of any wide receiver all season. This week it gets Dallas, who actually has the least points allowed in the NFC, if you can believe it. They don't have that shutdown corner. Corey Davis really is their only receiver. I think he gets 10 targets this week, and I would definitely start him. In fact, I would trade for him now before your opponent who has Corey Davis and is soured on him realizes that. I would definitely trade for Corey Davis. Cortland Sutton is also a start. I don't know if you guys have been watching him play. I know he's been the number 3 in Case Keenum's offense, which isn't really desirable, but this kid can play some football. I think he's the best rookie wide receiver in the NFL, and we're all about to see it on full display because as that third receiver, he hasn't got more than 6 targets in any game, and he has been involved. He's been doing great the last few weeks, 6, 8, 10, 9, 10, 11 fantasy points. He's going to get a lot more now. In fact, I would not be at all surprised if he ends up passing Emmanuel Sanders as the number 1 in that offense before long, because I think he's a true alpha dog number 1 receiver. He reminds me a lot of Alshon Jeffrey. He's long and lanky. He's got great athleticism to go up and high point the ball. He's great after the catch because he's really agile. Cortland Sutton is an absolute stud. I'm starting him every single week moving forward, unless we find out that they're just not going to use him. I don't know why that would be the case. I think they moved Thomas because they know what they have in Sutton. It's not a great matchup against Houston, but I've got him as my wide receiver 29. Someone that I've got a little bit higher than him, and this might surprise some people, is DJ Moore of the Carolina Panthers. He hasn't really played all season because for whatever reason, they had him as the wide receiver number 4, but Torrey Smith was out last week. I think he's going to be out this week, but even if he's not, DJ Moore probably stole the job from him. 129 yards from scrimmage on just 7 touches last week. I think he gets more and more work as people realize what they've gotten him. DJ Moore reminds me a lot of Robert Woods, Doug Baldwin. He's incredible after the catch. They're even going to get him the ball. He carries the ball out of the backfield sometimes. He's got a difficult matchup this week. Tampa, I know, has been, letting up a lot of passing yards, but he's got the most difficult matchup in their secondary. With that said, I'm still playing him against Tampa Bay. I've got him at wide receiver 25. Calvin Ridley, I've had a lot of people asking me, what's going on with him? Like, was it just a 2-week fluke like Mike Williams? Should I drop him? Should I bench him? Should I trade him? You're not going to get much value for him right now. I think that is going to turn around. He's a beast in the red zone. He runs great routes, incredible body control. Remember, he's a 24-year-old rookie. It's not like he's been awful. He's still getting, 4 receptions for 38, 3 for 47, 5 for 43. A lot of the guys in this wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range, you're not going to get that each and every week. That's his floor. And I think that he's got an incredible ceiling too. Washington's, again, not the best matchup, but I think if you have Calvin Ridley, you start him this week with 6 teams on bye. Somebody else that I am actually not playing is Amari Cooper. And this is coming from like the biggest Amari Cooper truther. I know you think it might be Tags. I actually think I like Amari Cooper more than Mike Tagliere, which is really saying something, right? So Amari Cooper is going up against Tennessee. They've got the most improved secondary in the NFL this season. And it's not like top notch or anything like that. But you look, somebody tweeted at me. I actually asked for, if anyone had this information, and one of our listeners tweeted at me. So let me pull up these stats. Here are some recent number 1, number 2 receivers who were traded midseason, their first game with the team. Roy Williams, 1 reception for 28 yards. Randy Moss, 4 for 81. That's the only exception. Randy Moss again, 1 for 26. That's like maybe the greatest receiver in NFL history besides Jerry Rice that we're talking about. Percy Harvin, this was when he was traded, when he was like having an MVP type of season. He was leading the league in fantasy points when he was traded. He went to the Jets, 3 for 22. I'm sorry, that was the year after that, not his MVP season. They did not trade him that year. I don't know what I was thinking. And then Kelvin Benjamin last year, who wasn't great, but he was a wide receiver 3, kind of like Amari Cooper, 3 for 42. So I don't know what you're expecting Amari Cooper to do. I know he had a bye to get acclimated with the team. He's going to be the number 1 there. I would not drop him. I would not sell him. I would buy him after this week because everyone's going to think, oh, Amari Cooper is still bad. He was never bad to begin with. This is just not a good situation. And he didn't have good situations in the first 7 weeks because they just refused to throw him the ball. He's going to get the ball in Dallas. I'd make a move for him now, but I'm definitely not starting him. I've got him wide receiver 47. And for what it's worth, the expert consensus, which, like I said, is where you draw from 130 teams, our site, 130 experts around the industry. Our site draws that all in. It's called ECR. They've got him at wide receiver 44. So again, not a good start. Maybe a flex play if you're desperate. David Moore is another guy that a lot of people have been asking me about because he just keeps getting the job done, right? They dropped Brandon Marshall. They obviously have a lot more confidence in David Moore to move someone like, or to drop someone like Marshall. He's got 19, 13, 20 fantasy points over the last 3 weeks with 4 touchdowns in that time. But guys, he's only got, let's see, 11, 13, 14 targets on the season. 14 targets. That's not going to cut it. He's still the number 3 in an offense that passes the ball like 23, 24 times a game. I'm not starting him. Even if it was a really good matchup, I still would not start David Moore. It's not a great matchup against the Chargers. So I've got him as wide receiver 54. Again, ECR has him at 48. So I'm not alone there. It's not like hyperbole or anything. Jordy Nelson is one where I disagree with the majority of the experts, though. And Mike Tagliere agreed with me on the podcast. It's just puzzling to me. I don't understand why everyone thinks Jordy Nelson, wide receiver 33, is suddenly going to be super involved. I understand Amari Cooper was gone. Guys, Amari Cooper was not getting any targets. It's not like Nelson is going to pick up a ton of targets because Cooper's gone. This is somebody since Cooper was traded last week, got 4 targets for 1 reception and 14 yards in a great matchup. Jordy Nelson, guys, is just not very good. He's had 1 good game this season. He did catch 2 touchdowns he got a touchdown in week 4 and a touchdown in week 5 as well. But with Amari Cooper gone, they're probably going to move Nelson out wide, and he's just too slow to do anything there. The only reason he's relevant anymore was because he was in the slot. It's not a good offense. I am not starting him tonight. I've got him at wide receiver 46, just right ahead of Amari Cooper. A couple guys I had to have ahead of him, Danny Amendola, with Kenny still banged up. Albert Wilson is out for the season, and Amendola is in the slot. The Jets have the worst slot cornerback maybe in the NFL. I think Amendola is a safe play. I think he's also got a nice ceiling this week. Randall Cobb should be back against the Patriots. That's going to be another high-scoring game. I've got him in my top 40. Anthony Miller is in my top 40. And I know you're used to tags being the one telling you, hey, start Anthony Miller. And it hasn't really worked out. But the thing is, he's got 7 receptions in each of the last 2 weeks. It looks like Allen Robinson's going to be out again. Anthony Miller has a decent matchup because Tre'Davious White is going to be covering Taylor Gabriel on the opposite side, and that leaves Anthony Miller as probably the number 1 target in this offense. They stop tight ends as well, so Trey Burton's not going to have a big week. I think it's Anthony Miller and Tariq Cohen in a decent matchup against Buffalo. So I've got Anthony Miller at wide receiver 40. The ECR has him at 50, so make of that what you will. I've got Chris Hogan as a start as well. He hasn't exactly been bad. Like, he started the season bad, but ever since Josh Gordon got going and he moved back into his role as not the number 1 receiver where the defense is focusing on him, he's gone 4 receptions for 78, 6 for 63, 2 for 49. Guys, he's going to be just fine. You can start him in the flex almost every week, and especially this week against the Green Bay Packers. Kiki QT against Denver, if he plays, is not a bad play because Demaryius Thomas is out. I'm sorry, Demaryius Thomas isn't out, but Demaryius Thomas just got traded. I don't think he's immediately going to step into this offense and be the number 2. I think it's going to be QT this week. Traquan Smith is a good play. Devontae Parker is a good play. I know that makes you puke, but the fact of the matter is that Devontae Parker, whenever he's healthy, he's been a good wide receiver. You can remember it differently if you want, but just go look at his game log and you'll feel a lot better about this decision. I think Geronimo Allison is a good start as well. Chris Godwin. Let's move on to a couple guys that I am not playing here. Antonio Callaway. I know he had the good game last week. Kansas City secondary is much improved, though, so I'm not playing Callaway. He's just outside my flex plays. Mohamed Sanu, a lot of people are going to be plugging him into the flex, but against Washington, they've got one of the best slot corners in football. In fact, their entire defense is a lot better than people realize. I think this is a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Like, they're not one of my top 5 teams, but this Washington team, they've got a lot of talent. Watch them play. Their defense is strong. I think Alex Smith is still a quality quarterback. Adrian Peterson's playing great football. I think they're going to surprise some people. I think they're going to sneak into the playoffs, and we'll see what happens from there. Marquez Valdez-Scantling, because Randall Cobb is back. Geronimo Allison, I think, is still the number 2. I'm not starting Valdez-Scantling. And also Demaryius Thomas, already mentioned. Same kind of thing as Amari Cooper. First week with the team, getting traded midseason does not tend to work. And Demaryius Thomas was already a low-end wide receiver 3 anyway. All right, let's move on over to the tight ends now. We'll go with Kyle Rudolph of the Minnesota Vikings, who has really just been a bummer this year. He's kind of a touchdown or bust guy, right? Let's look at his game log here. He's got 72 yards in one game. Besides that, he doesn't have over 60. He's only got 2 touchdowns on the season. Let's face it, this is Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs' offense. But this week against Detroit, they have been awful against the tight end, just absolutely dreadful. So I think that Kyle Rudolph is his must start. I've got him as my tight end 8 ahead of guys like Jared Cook, Trey Burton, who, as I mentioned, is not in a good matchup. Jordan Reed, even going up against Atlanta, I don't think that Jordan Reed is the best play. Now, granted, you have to start him. What are you going to do? Pick up Chris Herndon? I'm not playing Chris Herndon, guys. He's got three straight games with touchdowns, but you look at his target share last 3 weeks, 2, 7, 2. Guys, he's hardly getting any looks. I don't think that this is going to continue. For him to get a touchdown in 4 straight weeks with that kind of target share is very unlikely. So I've got him down as my tight end 16. I would much rather go and get, if you're desperate, go get Hayden Hurst. I know Hayden Hurst, again, 1, 2, 3 targets since he came back from injury, but this is someone who the Ravens had big plans for in the preseason, and then he got hurt. And their coaches come out and said, we need to get this guy the ball a lot more. He's really talented. I think it happens. It's a great matchup against Pittsburgh. One of these weeks, he's going to get 8, 9 targets and surprise everyone. And then you look at what he's doing. When the Ravens come back from the bye, Cincinnati might be the best matchup for tight ends is against Cincinnati, and then Oakland. They're probably number 2 or number 3. Atlanta, Kansas City, Tampa Bay. Hayden Hurst is going to have a great second half and really surprise a lot of people. I think it starts this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. A couple other tight ends that I don't think are bad plays: Vance McDonald, Benjamin Watson, Austin Hooper. Besides that, it's just all the obvious guys. Greg Olsen has a great matchup against Tampa. He's in my top 5 this week. George Kittle, O.J. Howard. David Njoku, even coming off the 0 target game, whatever that was. Yeah, he's a little bit banged up, but good matchup against Kansas City. He's the number 2 in that offense in terms of receivers. Even with the 0 last week, guys, he's got 28 targets in the last 4 weeks. You would take that from any tight end. So I think he's a definite start. Let's move on over to DST, and then we'll jump over to the Q&A. The New York Jets are a great play this week. Obviously, the best streamers, the Dallas Cowboys against Tennessee. Everyone's got them up there. The Carolina Panthers are a good play against Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's turnover prone. But for me, the Jets are somebody that a lot of people just aren't thinking about. I've got them as my DST 10 going up against Miami, Osweiler, Tannehill, whoever they're throwing out there, it's going to be ugly. So I think that they're a solid start. Plus, Miami's offensive line just has not been very good lately. A defense that I'm not playing, a lot of people are playing the San Francisco 49ers. They were decent last week. They let up 18 points. That was the first time all season that they let up less than 24. So it was a great matchup against Arizona, maybe the best possible matchup. And Oakland's offense actually hasn't been that bad. They're middle of the pack in terms of opponents' defense, special teams, fantasy points allowed. So a lot of people are going to say they're an easy team to pick on. Their offensive line is not bad. Derek Carr is really not that bad. He's just in a situation where they don't have a lot of playmakers. So I wouldn't be surprised if they only let up 23 points this game, which would be one of their best performances of the season. But this is not a good defense. I'm not starting them. I'm also not starting the Buffalo Bills against Chicago. They've got some upside. Mitch Trubisky throws some interceptions, but I'm not playing them. I'm not playing the Pittsburgh Steelers against Joe Flacco, who, again, they've got some upside, but I don't think it's exactly the safest play. The Chargers, the Los Angeles Rams going up against the Saints, don't play them. Patriots against Green Bay, I probably don't need to tell you that. A couple other streamers that you could get away with: Tennessee Titans at Dallas, Seattle. They're probably not a streamer anymore against the Los Angeles Chargers. So let's see. I've got about 10 minutes for Q&A. Let's jump right into it. And the easier you keep it for me, the better. Just, list the 2 players. Who would you start? Or 3 or 4, whatever. I'll take trade questions as well. So Matt Breida or Brandon Cooks in standard leagues. I'm definitely starting Cooks in that one. Michael Crabtree or Calvin Ridley. This one's close, but I've got Michael Crabtree. He's not in the best matchup, but Michael Crabtree is in the top 15 in the NFL in targets this year. So I'm definitely starting him each and every game. Mark Ingram, Nick Chubb, Marlon Mack, rest of the season. Pick 2 for PPR. I would go Ingram barely over Mack, and then maybe 3 or 4 spots over Chubb. Matt Breida or Kenyon Drake in standard scoring. That's close in standard. I'm going to go Drake, but in PPR, it's not very close. Let's see. Drop Doug Baldwin for Traquan Smith. No, I would not do that. And frankly, it's not very close for me. Greg Olsen or OJ Howard. This week, I've got Greg Olsen as my number 4, but I've got OJ Howard all the way up at number 3. So they're both good plays, but I would go with OJ Howard out of that group. Let's see. Aaron Jones or Kerryon Johnson. These ones are really close. Let me pull up my rankings just to make sure. Because as I'm building my rankings, I'm putting every single piece of information into it. And right now I'm just kind of going off the top of my head on what I can remember. I want to make sure I get this one right. Aaron Jones, Kerryon Johnson. I've got Kerryon at number 20, Aaron Jones at RB 23. So that's a close one, but I would go with Kerryon Johnson. All right, Cortland Sutton or Mark Ingram in a flex PPR. I would go with Ingram. Like I said, I love the Sutton call this week, but it's still Ingram for me. Is Connor still a good start? Connor's definitely a good start, but let's see who you have. You've got Nick Chubb, Phillip Lindsay, Aaron Jones. Let me see how I've got these guys ranked. Phillip Lindsay is my RB 13. Nick Chubb, RB 14. And let's see who the other guy was again. James Conner. James Conner, RB 7. And ECR has him at 7 as well. So I think Conner is still your best start there. All right, confidence that Melvin Gordon plays this week. I don't know why he would play. Because the Chargers are doing just fine. They're coming off their bye week. Austin Eckler was awesome. I think you take it easy with his hamstring and just let him come back next week against Oakland. Seattle is maybe the most physical defense in the NFL. With that said, I would probably put it about a 30-35% chance. So if you've got Melvin Gordon, I would take a look and see, if there's somebody else that you can pick up. Maybe Jalen Richard is out there or something like that. Pickings are slim this week, though. Okay, let's go back to the questions here. Matt Breida or Traquan Smith in PPR. I'm going with Breida this week. Chubb or Carson. I've got Chubb. Robert Woods or Cortland Sutton. It is definitely Robert Woods. I've got him in my top 12 this week. Sutton is just inside my top 30. Josh Gordon or John Brown. This is a close one as well. Let me pull up my rankings. I've got Gordon at wide receiver 19. And John Brown at wide receiver 18. So that's as close as it gets, but I would go with John Brown or your gut, whichever one you would rather go with, because that's a really close one. Geronimo Allison or Demaryius Thomas. I've got Allison, not very close for me. ECR has them a lot closer, though, for what it's worth. Stephon Diggs over John Brown. Ryan Fitzpatrick or Russell Wilson. Ooh, this is a close one as well. I've got Fitzpatrick 12, Russell Wilson 11. For what it's worth, ECR has Russell Wilson 8, Ryan Fitzpatrick 11. I'm actually going to plug this one here into who should I start to see what percentage of experts have these two guys going. Just to give you an idea of what it looks like when you plug them in. So we've got Russell Wilson at 8, Ryan Fitzpatrick is 11. So let's see, of all the experts who have filled it out so far, we've got 73 of 98 experts are going with Russell Wilson there. Of the top experts, 85% are going with him. So that's of the top 20 most accurate experts so far. It's a good matchup. And when you plug in, use the start sit tool, it gives you all kinds of information, who they're going up against, what the matchup ranking is, all the stats, fantasy points against for their opponent. It tells you which experts have them rated the highest. So if you believe Sean Corner is the best in the industry, and he has been for 3 straight seasons, you can go see who he has. Jake Seeley right now, I see him up here. He's always in the top 10. He's got Russell Wilson 9, Ryan Fitzpatrick 12. So that start sit tool is really cool, and it's very specific to all of your questions. Let's see here. Candy Corner, Black Licorice, Gabriel, Black Licorice should not ever be in any question. It is so disgusting. I don't know how it can be considered candy. Candy corn's fine for me. Like if I'm taking candy corn compared to most candy, it's like a 3. But compared to like all the food in the world, it's probably like a 7. Black licorice is a 1 either way. It is just disgusting. All right, let's see here. Better defense special team stream. Raiders tonight against maybe a backup quarterback, or Washington. Let's see who they're going up against. Because I don't remember off the top of my head. Sorry about that. They're going up against Atlanta. I would not play them. I think Oakland's a very good stream tonight against Mullins. Even if Beathard is healthy, he's a good guy to go up against. I've got them as my defense special team 13. ECR has them at 16, but I'm not sure that everyone is quickly adjusted to the Mullins news. I just updated my rankings. I'll continue to do so until Sunday. So let's see. I'll take maybe 6, 7, 8 more questions. Cobb or Allison? Ed, I've got Allison. I think most of the experts have Cobb, but I disagree with them. I think Allison is the number 2 in that offense. Amendola or Ingram, it is definitely Ingram for me, even in full PPR. Free agent quarterback pickup right now. If you need someone for this week, I'm going Joe Flacco. I remember Tag saying on the podcast he really likes Alex Smith this week against Atlanta. That's not a bad call either. I've got them RB quarterback 14 and quarterback 15 this week, so it's really close. PPR, Jalen Ramsey or Calvin Ridley? This is a good question. In half PPR, I would go with Ridley. In full PPR, I would go with Richard, which is really weird because usually you would go with the wide receiver, right? But Jalen Richard, like I said, 39 receptions in 7 games this year. He's a reception hog, and Ridley really isn't. He doesn't get much work. He's kind of the number 3 in that offense, just a really good red zone threat. So I would go with Richard. How did you not mention Three Musketeers or Milky Way? They weren't even in contention for me. Like, I don't have them, either of them, in my top 30 candies. Three Musketeers is like maybe outside my top 100. It's really, I don't know why people consider it a candy. It's like you've got chocolate on the outside and just like fluff. It's not even chocolate fluff. It's just fluff. So yeah, it's just kind of sludge. Well, I don't think it's very good. All right, Mike is asking Trubisky or Rodgers. Man, you've got 2 good quarterbacks in your hand. I would maybe trade Trubisky after he has another nice week, but I'm going with Aaron Rodgers here. You start him regardless. Even over Patrick Mahomes, I've got Rodgers this week, and for the rest of the season. I know I'm going to get some hate tweets. By the way, it's at Bobby Fantasy Pro if you want to send those my way. I like Mahomes. I just don't think he's all of a sudden better than the greatest quarterback in the history of the world, Aaron Rodgers. So I'm not going there yet. John Brown, Cooper Kupp, Mark Ingram. If I have to pick one of these, I'm assuming it's half PPR. I would go with Mark Ingram. In any scoring system, I would go with Mark Ingram. I know he hasn't been especially good, but he's getting a lot of carries. He's in a game with a 59.5 over under. And don't forget, last year he was in the top 10 for pass catching running backs in receptions. I think a lot of people don't realize that because Alvin Kamara had so many, and they just assumed, well, Kamara was the third down back, and Ingram was just the bruiser on first and second downs. That's not true. He was getting a lot of receptions as well. All right, OJ Howard or Matt Breida, PPR flex, and why? This is a good one. I would go with Howard because we know what we're going to get. It's a really good matchup, but Breida could get just 10 touches tonight. It's a good match. It's a great matchup against Oakland, but I trust Howard a little bit more because Breida's nursing that injury. All right, let's just do a couple more here. Deion Lewis or Doug Baldwin in PPR flex. I've got Baldwin. Isaiah Crowell or Sony Michel. It depends on the injury news, right? Because if we hear that Sony's definitely playing, I would go with Sony. But Crowell's in a really good situation this week, so I would plan on playing him. If it's questionable, like a game time decision for Sony, I would go with Crowell. All right, 2 more here. All right. Is it smart to keep Big Ben and Ryan Fitzpatrick? This is a good question, Elizabeth. I would say no, don't do that because both of them are replacement level, depending on the type of league you play in. If you're in one of these leagues where everyone's rostering 2 quarterbacks, chances are you're not going to find someone better than Big Ben or Ryan Fitzpatrick. And so you could keep both. But I would just keep Big Ben. I've got him a little bit better than Fitzpatrick rest of the season, and you can use that extra bench spot a lot better than a second quarterback, in my opinion. One way I like to do it, and a lot of people will be puzzled by this, like, why would you carry 2 DSTs? I like to carry 2 defense special teams at this point in the season because I've always got next week's best streamer. I don't want to pay 5, 10 fab bucks every week for the best streamer. I want to pay 0 and get them a week in advance. I think that's the best way to spend your last bench spot, unless you can go get someone like Spencer Ware still out there and you've got room on your bench for someone like him because he's an incredible pickup. There's like a 20% chance Kareem Hunt goes down. If it happens, you've immediately got a top 8 fantasy running back. All right, last question here. Jared Cook or Rob Gronkowski? I've got Rob Gronkowski as my number 2 tight end this week. ECR has him at 3. ECR has Cook at 4. So it's a good question, but I would go with Rob Gronkowski, and the majority of the experts would agree. All right, guys, that's all for today's show. Again, if you have more start sit questions, you can go to my Twitter at Bobby Fantasy Pro. I'm going to be posting my rankings here this afternoon. And on that page, you'll be able to see how it compares to the expert consensus. So you can think, hey, is Bobby actually crazy on this one? Like, does everyone agree with him? I don't use hyperbole when I'm building my rankings. This is how I actually build my own fantasy lineup. So I'm not trying to lead you astray. Again, I'm going to get some wrong, like the Deshaun Watson call again last week. So I apologize for that one. Hopefully we can nail it this week and help you win some games, though. If you have more questions, you can check out the Start Sit Assistant. Again, you can go to my playbook, upload your team. It takes about 5 seconds, one team for free, and you'll get your team of experts giving you direct advice for your team. All right, guys, that's all. Thank you for watching. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and the like button. We do really appreciate that support. Thanks for watching and enjoy your football.